Okay, let's dive right into this. If you've looked at the news lately, you know the headlines are just completely dominated by these massive union walkouts. We're seeing demands for higher performance bonuses and really intense standoffs at giant conglomerates like Samsung. But what if this huge industrial tremor isn't actually about the money at all? Today, we're going to explore this really fascinating socioeconomic philosophy that suggests these strikes, well, they're actually just a symptom of a decades-long structural failure. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the hidden dynamics behind those picket lines and fundamentally rethink how we define work, wealth, and really human potential itself.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the root cause of the conflict, then look at the law of money and mass, reframe corporations as massive labs, discuss the pivot from laborers to researchers, touch on global co-prosperity, and finally, look at a solution for leaders.
With global investors and, frankly, an entire nation watching a crisis of this magnitude unfold, we really have to ask the central, pressing question: how do we actually fix this? To find the true solution, we have to look way past the noisy picket lines and figure out exactly which fundamental system just completely broke down. We need to understand why the traditional corporate band-aids simply aren't working anymore.
All right, Section 1. Root cause of labor conflict beyond the strike.
So look at this dynamic. The source material argues it's not about greedy unions, it's about a completely stagnant system. Imagine, just for a second, spending 30 years on a corporate hamster wheel. You're just following orders to make a living, with absolutely no structured effort from the company to elevate your intellect or prep you for life outside those factory walls. That prolonged lack of human development, it becomes a psychological pressure cooker. A really deep, agonizing frustration takes root when people are treated merely as cogs in a machine for decades. And eventually, that pressure cooker explodes. That explosion is the raw energy driving today's corporate unrest. And this brings up a wild point. Unions might actually be demanding the wrong thing. Rather than just fighting for a heavier bag of cash, the philosophy suggests they should be demanding serious investment in their minds. Think about the stark contrast here. If a worker retires after 30 years of loyal service, but they lack the worldly knowledge to even, say, protect their retirement savings from a basic scam, well, the corporation has utterly failed them. The real demand shouldn't just be a larger slice of the financial pie, it needs to be absolute accountability for stunted human potential. Moving right along to Section 2, the law of money and mass, the energy of wealth. Okay, here's where this philosophy gets truly fascinating. Think about the actual word money. Get this, in Korean, the linguistic root of the word literally sounds like spinning or turning. This implies that wealth isn't some static object you just hoard in a giant vault. No, it's a dynamic, universal energy designed to constantly circulate, kind of like planets rotating in space. Money demands movement, and trying to trap it without understanding its fundamental nature, that is a guaranteed recipe for friction. So to actually harness that circulating energy, you need what the source calls mass. And in this context, mass means an individual's intrinsic intellectual capacity and their education level. It basically acts as a gravitational pull. If you hand a massive bonus to someone without the educational mass to manage it, that financial energy will literally just slip right through their fingers. So, capitulating to wage demands without first elevating the workforce's intellect, it's a losing game for absolutely everyone. The money will inevitably evaporate if the mind holding it hasn't grown.
Let's jump to Section 3. Corporations are massive labs, gathering the elite.
This leads us to a pretty radical redefinition of the modern workplace. A massive corporation like Samsung isn't just a factory for manufacturing physical goods, right? It's effectively a giant research funnel. It didn't reach the absolute top tier just by having deep pockets or massive warehouses. It got there by absorbing the absolute brightest minds of a highly educated generation and putting them into one concentrated space. Therefore, the true, irreplaceable asset of the corporation isn't the heavy machinery on the floor. It's the concentrated intellectual mass inside the building. Which brings us to Section 4, from laborers to researchers, the great pivot. If a top-tier corporation is essentially this elite gathering of intellectuals, then calling them mere laborers is a massive contradiction. We've got to cut the strings of that old top-down puppet model. An empowered thinker is fundamentally different from someone who just clocks in for a wage. Imagine if everyone in the organization, yes, right down to the security and sanitation teams, was empowered with the title and respect of a researcher. By simply changing this identity and shifting those expectations, you instantly transform the culture. You go from a culture that resents orders to one that organically innovates and solves problems together. It's a real game changer. Now, this massive crisis didn't just pop up overnight. It's the direct fallout of a missed paradigm shift.
Look at this timeline. The physical labor movements of the 80s and 90s? They made complete historical sense back then. But by the year 2000, top conglomerates should have permanently abolished that laborer mindset. That millennium turning point was the exact moment leading companies needed to transition their entire workforce into this researcher framework. Because leadership clung to the industrial past instead of embracing an empowered future, well, we're seeing this explosive operational chaos today. They missed the boat.
Now let's zoom out a bit for Section 5, Korea and Co-Prosperity of Mankind, a Global Destiny.
This source material takes a pretty huge leap here, going way beyond corporate walls to tie this directly to national and even global destiny. It asks us to think of the nation itself as a protected incubator, designed specifically to raise visionary leaders. Once these corporate researchers harness their collective intellect, their true duty isn't just generating localized profit anymore. It's sharing those innovations outwards to drive the harmony and co-prosperity of all mankind. It's an incredibly profound vision, really, where corporate success is no longer this selfish endeavor, but something directly linked to the advancement of humanity itself.
Finally, let's wrap things up with Section 6, a solution for leaders, the generational duty.
So how do leaders actually fix this whole shebang, this deeply rooted systemic issue? It comes down to understanding generational duty. The source outlines a strict evolutionary cycle. Step 1, the first-generation founder sets the initial path. Step 2, the second generation scales the business up aggressively. But Step 3, the third generation, like Samsung's current leadership, they absolutely cannot act like their predecessors. Their sole duty is no longer blind expansion. Their defining responsibility is wise operational management, figuring out how this massive entity they inherited can best contribute to society.
Because true success in this crucial third phase, it isn't measured in quarterly profit margins anymore. It is measured in societal respect. A company that is profoundly respected by the public becomes virtually untouchable by any outside force. But navigating out of the current chaos requires some serious light. Leaders who are stuck in the daily friction of strikes and operational breakdowns desperately need to seek out a mentor. They need a teacher to hold the lantern and unlock this broader vision of societal duty. Without that guidance, the philosophy warns, they'll just remain trapped in the noise.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. The friction we're witnessing in today's workforce isn't just a basic battle over paychecks. It's a deep, unmet hunger for intellectual growth and a fundamental shift in identity. Are we, as a society, actually ready to stop fighting for financial scraps and start demanding the environment to grow as genuine innovators? What identity will you claim in the workforce of tomorrow? Keep questioning the structures around you, and thanks for exploring this fascinating paradigm shift with us today.